We got some big brains up on the stage. Wow, look at the big brains up on the stage. We've got Steve Harney from Keeping Current Matters. We've got Cade Madison from Real Trends. We've got Bob Corcoran from Corcoran Consulting and Coaching, and we've got Laura Monroe from Real Satisfied, and they are our panel of experts. I'm going to ask each of them to, not in Chicago 15 seconds, okay? So that doesn't mean you get 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Got it?
Windy City.
Quickly introduce yourself. You've sat in on some of the sessions today. Give me your one takeaway from today, and then we'll start with some questions. I've also have a special guest microphone runner with us today. Please welcome to the mic, Chris Spiker. Go ahead, Steve. Let's start with Laura and work our way across. Laura, you're up first.
Hi, my name's Laura Monroe. I'm the Director of Marketing with Real Satisfied. My biggest takeaway has been how important building culture within your brand story is really what connects the dots between your consumers, your prospects, your database, and everything that you do moving forward. I just think it is the core value of how you manage your brand online. And I think that whether that's from the front end or from the back end of what your takeaways are from every transaction, every relationship you have, it's really the core of who you are. That's my takeaway.
Excellent. To me, I really feel like I came home because for 26 years, it's always been about building culture, building your foundation. When I looked at the agenda for this event, to finally see an organization that had the backbone to say, you know what, there's more to this business, than lead generation, lead conversion, because it starts at the bottom with your building blocks. So I was extremely impressed by the agenda of all the items and the expertise of all the speakers that they brought in this year. The thing is, are you going to implement what you learned? And when you do, the sky's the limit.
Cade Madison from Real Trends. It's not just a theme here. I've noticed it's not necessarily just a takeaway. It's more so the culture theme is great, but it's really the conversations outside once people are walking around going to get food or drinks, and that conversation has continued on. And you can see it with Boomtown just bleeding throughout their culture, or throughout their organization is their culture. And I think everyone is talking about it, and that's what's important,
I think my biggest takeaway was just a few minutes ago, because as you know, I'm always talking about content. And when I listened to Laura speak, what popped into my mind is the fact that the content's like your song, and what Laura was speaking on is you better make sure that you know how to use iTunes if you want to sing. You're not on 8-track cassettes. So she's keeping us right on the forefront of how to get our message out, and we have to be on the forefront of that. Not just have a great message, but know how to be able to get that message out. So I want to say thank you very much, Laura.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna pose the first question, because one of the things, and I'm in complete agreement, the content to me is right on point. Culture is critical. Culture is an active part of people's ability to create profits. It's not just fluff. It drives, ultimately, it's a living thing inside of your organization. Everybody goes to conferences, they sit and listen to these speakers, they have all the greatest intentions of going back and doing something. I'm gonna start with Steve on this one. If you were to give somebody a piece of advice and they said, you know what, I have not defined my why, I have not set forth either the values that I'm going to put on my wall, or I'm going to go back and create a karma wall like KCM did. I love that. I'm going to do that. What's the first step that they need to take in order to set that in action to allow them to actually execute?
I think in order for anyone in here to really feel motivated enough to do anything that you hear, you have to fully understand it. Because there's a lot of great ideas, and when you really get the idea is when you're going to act on it, implement the idea. Because our industry doesn't lack from great ideas. There's plenty of great ideas. It does lack from people implementing some of those ideas. So I think that if you want to implement the why, and that's really important to you, the first step I would probably take is pretty much at the beginning, once a week, and with your people at least once a month, grab Simon Sinek's TED Talk. It's about 17 minutes on the why, and I would commit to watching that. If you're the leader, I would commit to watching that once a week for several weeks in a row. And for your people, I would do it for a couple of months in a row. Because the concept of what the why is not an easy concept to grab. And he's done a phenomenal job in that 17 minutes really doing it. We run that tape once a month in our office still years later. And if anyone's got a challenge with it, we make them sit down and watch that. He does a phenomenal job of explaining it. That would be my first step. So you make sure you understand it.
Yeah, I think that's great. You know, one thing, I think this quote, if you want to write it down, is probably the best quote to define that. It was by a man by the name of Patrick Lencioni, and he's a phenomenal CEO consultant. He helped build culture for Southwest Airlines. And it was, if you try and be everything to everyone, you'll be nothing to no one. And I thought that really resonated because, you know, if you try and appeal to, you know, the broad spectrum, you know, you're just going to be another guy.
Bob, you've been talking about this stuff for, you said, 26 years. Why don't more people actively place values, the why, culture at the center of their profit-making activities?
It's as easy as that you don't understand it. You know, in 26 years when I got started in this business, I came out of retail management and I was a turnaround specialist. People joke and say, "You're still doing that, Bob?" I said, "Yeah, but now it's get to deal with really lives." And, you know, when I got started in the business, I realized what I was dealing with was a master salesperson who knew nothing about running a business. And that's a lot of you in this room. You have built your businesses because of the effort you put into it. And you got this success, and yet you go and hire people, anybody, you know, you give them the breathing test. Oh, you're breathing, you're hired. Well, no, it's hire slow, fire fast. And at the end of the day, if you don't take the time, okay, to implement properly, you're going to fail, or you're going to keep on that treadmill like a rat until you just wade away and go off into the sunset. But at the end of the day, you have an unbelievable opportunity. I forget who said it earlier today, but I think it was you. We get to help people's dreams come true, Steve. And that's what we do for a living. You get to help people's dreams come true. So take a step back, work on your business, not in your business, and think things out. You know, one of the things we do with all of our clients, we give you a project list, and then we rate it, you know, short-term goal, mid-term goal, you know, long-term goal. Plan your work, work your plan. How many people got sick and tired of hearing that in school, right? Yeah, it comes back to haunt us today. Take the time to plan your work, and most importantly, work on your business at least 1 hour a day. You can all find it.
Let's open this up to some questions. I know you have to have some. If you don't take advantage of these 4 people on the stage right now, you're missing the opportunity. So if you want to talk, raise your hand. Either I or my lovely assistant will find our way to you. And of course, Bob, I joyfully hand you the mic.
Thank you, gentlemen. Question.
Who's that guy?
Who is that
Oh,
guy?
my goodness, Robert.
Hello there, Bob. What one thing can each of you give us that we should be looking out for in the next year that's coming our way? We know TRID or TRID, whatever you want to pronounce it, TRID. We know that's here, but anything that from your own perspectives and what you're seeing that we as agents should start preparing for or move in a direction that we haven't talked about at this event?
So I do technology and marketing consulting, so I'll take it from a technology standpoint. You might know the company SmartZip, right? Predictive analytics and big data, and that's huge right now. You know, what they did is they basically take all of the public data out there, so, you know, age of the home, age of the resident, you know, all these different public data sources, and predict who's more likely to buy or more likely to sell within 6 to 12 months. Now, I think in the future, and what the future and the evolution of it is for predictive marketing is really being able to tap into, and what we're doing at RealTrends actually right now is we're tapping into a lot of the social media conversation centered around real estate. So looking for those predictors of, you know, just got married, just had a baby, just attended my son's high school graduation, you know, all these different terms that are out there and that people are posting. We're being able to strip out those usernames and post advertisements in front of them on those same social media platforms based on what they said. So that, you know, that is definitely what to keep an eye on. But even further than that is not just social predictive marketing, but also behavioral predictive marketing. So it's not that they said they're getting married, it's that they're performing different actions online that will ultimately lead to a buying or selling decision. Just, they're on a parenting blog or they're on a baby name website. And so we're keeping an eye on people's habits, and now we're advertising and tapping into all the different display networks and advertising to them before they even know they want to buy or sell. They just know that they're pregnant or that they're going to get married ultimately. And so I'd say that, 1, 2, 3, 5 years down the road, that's going to be the future of real estate marketing.
Predict who you think is going to be the controller of that data. Who do you think is going to win that? Because somebody wants to win that data war.
Me.
You? Awesome.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're doing it right now, and we're doing it in geolocating people. So if they say they're moving to Denver, that's an easy one. But if they're geolocated in Denver talking about these certain actions, we're able to take that and deliver ads and drive traffic to our brokerage clients or team client websites or Boomtown sites because they do such a great job at the conversion. And yeah, so I don't know.
Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most difficult things being up here is being able to, in a few seconds, without trying to monopolize anything, get your message across. I spent a little time with, it's not Chad, it's Cade, over on the side there. Everyone should grab him before he leaves, all right? What they're working on right now is really some really important stuff. And though he gave you a taste of it right now, I'm not sure you got enough of a taste that you're thirsty for it, and you should be. So I'll just give a little extra there. Okay? Yep. What they're doing is really special, and we'll tie right into the Boomtown stuff. On my side, I think, you know me. I've said for the last 100 years, for the 3 most important words in real estate in the last 100 years were location, location, location. The 3 most important words in real estate for the next 100 years are going to be education, education, education. Now, to your question, Bob, how does that apply to what's going to happen next? There are 2 major sources of income coming at us pretty strong. The first are millennials. They're already in it. The data is coming out. They finally made up their decision. They always had over an 80% belief in homeownership being part of their American dream. It just took them a little longer to get married, fall in love, get married, and have some kids. But now that's all happening for them. So I think the millennials over the next year are going to be really, really big. And what's the key factor with them? Education. Second biggest thing. Some way, no matter who gets elected president, there's going to be some sort of immigration reform. We're not going to send out, and it's not 11 million, it's closer to 15 million, people out the door in buses while the scenes of what's happening in Syria are taking place every day. We, as a people, as a country, could never let that happen. So there's going to be some sort. It might not be a path to citizenship. It might be a path to legalization. But I will let you know that Brookings Institute says that when that immigration reform comes, and it will, no matter who's president, you even take Donald Trump, the guy all the way on the one side, we're throwing them all out, except for the good ones. The good ones, we're going to kind of make them cross the line and come right back in again. All right? So even he's calmed down on that. Brookings Institute says what that means to our industry is $60 billion a year to the real estate industry. $60 billion a year each of the next 10 years. And you know what those families need? Education.
Harney 2016.
Yeah, Tom Ferry's put that out there. I'm sorry, Bob. Tom Ferry's put Prestige for president. I don't know.
Laura, could you go on to
He's
Canva
crazy.
and design a presidential campaign graphic for him and post that onto social media here in a little bit?
We
'Cause
already got one
I
loudmouth
would
from
pay
New
to
York
see
doing
that. I would pay to see that.
We already got one loudmouth from New York doing that. We don't need a second one, believe me.
I'm someone that I stay in touch with the big trends and the big industry changes and the conversations that happen. But I think one of the things that we've started talking about over at Real Satisfied a little bit is that we're starting to see a lot, well, first of all, technology is always changing so much more rapidly than our businesses can adapt, that really, as professionals, I think what we really need to start doing is mapping out our customer journey on mobile, mapping out our customer journeys, not just through mobile, but every touch point that you have through your CRMs, through your conversations, through your follow-up marketing, through your after-close marketing, These come up in a variety of different mediums with a variety of different technology, and I really think that we need to sort of go back and audit how we're doing that job and executing on it for the consumer. There's an enormous amount of data that you have in regards to your transactions that are now being accessible through a lot of the big industry portals and providers. And they are learning from you what the consumer needs. But I think it's time for agents and brokers to start taking back that power so that you know how you can facilitate and execute all of this new technology, all the new information, and most especially educate the consumers, because they look to you first before they look to technology. And I think that if you can marry that information with how you do business with your clients, your past prospects, then you're going to be a step ahead of the game no matter where it goes.
Here, here.
You know, Bob, what I see over the next 3 years, I see a new position evolving in real estate, a chief information officer. I can talk about education, I can talk about geotrends, and I can talk about data over here. But who's interpreting the data for you? And a lot of times you're throwing money after money without understanding what you're spending. So if we go to look at the education, how about hire somebody who can interpret the data for you? Nothing is more satisfying than with our clients where we track, where every sale, every lead that comes in the door, we're tracking it down 80, 90 sources and where the sales are coming from. Last year, we were reviewing the data with one of my clients, and I go, look, you're spending this much on Zillow, but look at your return on investment. You know, you're getting less than a 1-to-1 return on investment. You should be looking for an 8-to-1. But nobody's there to interpret the data on a regular basis. So when I said earlier about taking the time to spend working on your business, it's about interpreting the data. And this is where I think you really got, our hands up against everybody. Is, yes, sit down and talk with you, but if you don't understand the data, you're going to be left behind.
So do you fear at all? And I'm gonna
Put me in, Coach.
I'm gonna jump in here real quick.
I'm afraid of Bob right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at him, for God's
Put me in,
sake.
Coach.
Had breakfast with Brad Nix this morning, and we were talking about this whole turning data into content piece, which he feels is very important. You all feel it's very important. And we started talking. I said, remember the reports that you go to Wall Street Journal, the vast majority of the content being created around annual reports in the public sector is being created by artificial intelligence. Brad's a part of a fantasy football league where he gets a news story about himself written by a robot on how, I'm sorry if you're embarrassed about being in your fantasy football league, but this is such a great story. He gets a story about his fantasy football league that's built on nothing but the data they're collecting on his behavior. Brad did a good job in his coaching decisions this week, playing Edgerson Peterson instead of blah, blah, blah. All done by a robot. Do you have any fear that the real estate agent, when looking at this kind of data, could be displaced from a content consumption
God, no, I
standpoint?
embrace it. Because the thing is, it all comes down to price, Jeff. Okay, what is that data going to be worth to me, and do I know what to do with that data?
Is the consumer going to be able to tell the difference?
Well, see, consumers want insight, not data. And they'll be able to grab that data. Sorry to.
No, that's okay. Real estate's still a belly-to-belly business, and I think in
Absolutely.
my lifetime it's going to remain that way.
I was at another conference a couple of years ago. Matter of fact, more than a couple of years ago now. And they had all the big data people up on the front, CoreLogic and all those companies. And the one thing that they complained about, they knew how to get the data together, they knew how to get the data points, but they came up with a term that year that was really the origin of KCM. They said, we can't figure out how to bring the data the last mile. And they all agreed to that. And that last mile is from their office to someone's kitchen table. See, because when it comes down to it, the data means nothing until there's somebody there explaining what it means to your family. And that happens in our business at a kitchen table, at our office desk with buyers, where we say, all right, this is everything that's happening on, because there's not a lack of data to the consumer right now. If anything, there's a plethora of data. What lacks is, and you hit it right on the head, who's going to connect those dots? Who's going to say, all right, this is what's happening, and this is what it means to you, your wife, and your kids. This is what it means to the sale of this house. This is what it means to the sale of the house, that you're thinking about buying. If you wait a year, well, do you know what they're projecting prices to be a year from now? Do you know what they're projecting interest rates to be for a year from now? Let's put those two numbers and figure out what your monthly payment is if you wait a year versus if you buy it today. That's what they're looking for from us. Not the data, but the insights, just like you hit it right on there.
And it's good to have competing data too. I think it's
Definite.
I think it's good to have it even on a brokerage website, because that even reinforces the fact that you need an agent. If you have a free home estimate, you have all these different data sources, RPR, it doesn't matter where the data is coming from, Zestimate, all these different data sources, if they're not 100%, that'll help reinforce the agent's role.
1 out of 3 Americans, this is fact, don't understand the equity in their home. Well, why don't we change our CMA to a home equity report, just for a couple of months? And we're going to be in your neighborhood on Saturdays and Sundays, and we're going to come in, but we can only stay there 10 minutes because we have a lot of your neighbors asking us for the same report. We can only be in and out there in 10 minutes. Why do you want to say that to a seller? Because they're afraid you're going to come in and never go home. Okay, I got to run into what I need from you when I get in there, because I'm going to take a look at the house. All I need is the mortgage documents, a copy of that. You can go ahead and black out all the numbers, the file numbers and the account numbers. I just want the real data. And then in 48 hours, I'll bring you back a home equity report to show you exactly how much equity you have in your house. That's the same thing as a CMA, a little different way, answering exactly the question 1 out of 3 of your neighbors don't know. How much equity do I have that I can make a move? That's taking the data and putting insights on it.
One thing I'd like to add to that, because I'm going to tie that back into the social media aspect and using your actual personal personas to be able to articulate and apply context to that in a very relatable way. Because I think we talked earlier that consumers in general are very scared of that data. They don't know how to look it up. They don't know how to be informed. They really don't know how to use it. And they look to agents and brokers to help articulate all of that data for you. So it's kind of up to you in a creative design standpoint to find those creative ways to open those conversations. And I'm reminded of an agent that I know in Michigan who she went onto her Facebook page, her personal profile page, and she started to ask for meetings, lunch meetings. She said, whoever is in my friends list who would like to have lunch with me in the next 2 weeks and talk about real estate, raise your hand, contact me, Facebook message me. I will sit and we will have lunch and we will have fun. And it will be great because I'm a great person. Do you know how many people? So she came back probably the next day and she said, I literally have 25 lunch dates in the next 2 weeks. She did this from her personal Facebook page.
That's more than 1 lunch a day.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. These are lunch dates she's going to have
Interpreting data.
We just learned that was also good at math.
No.
Yeah,
Well,
so that's helpful.
what I'm
CIO.
obviously it's going to go extended. But anyway, that was the bottom line, is there's a way for you to be creative with educating and be creative with making connections and be creative with connecting the dots. And I think that the more intentional we can get with doing that, you're going to be bringing in a lot more relationships and a lot more
Isn't
leads.
this part of the power of the whole team concept? I mean, there are a lot of
Yes.
teams here.
It is.
Definitely.
We tend to ask a lot of the individual real estate agent, right? They've got to be a marketing expert. Now they've got to be a graphic designer. They've got to be a data analyst. They've got to be a psychologist. They've got to be a sociologist. I'm sorry, there aren't that many people that are that talented to do that. So if you were looking at most teams, when you look at most teams, you know how they're made up. What's the missing ingredient that hasn't been hired on these teams yet? You think it's perhaps a CIO maybe, but what is it?
At the end of the day, it's you. It's the rainmaker. Who's in charge of the business? You have to be the one person that is making the decisions. You have to be the head of the bull here. And you have people, you have to learn the art of delegation. Well, the art of delegation comes through really awesome follow-through on your part. Somebody has to be there to make sure that, that everything is moving in the right direction. It goes to what I said earlier. You need to take time every day to simply just work on your business. This is not difficult if you will actually slow it down. The more you slow it down, you hear an athlete, like a baseball player will say, hey, I got better when I slowed the game down. Y'all hear that, right? Or a football, the game slowed down, and that's when they took off. When you learn to slow it down, you get better. We worked with clients over the years that are working 7 days a week, 80 hours, selling 80 homes. Well, now they're selling 700, working 3.5 days, but they're at the head of the team. And when you assume that mantle of leadership, and anything you can read from John Maxwell on leadership, you're going to win. But when you accept that mantle of leadership, it's everything that goes with it. And then you delegate to other people that report back to you.
Well,
Right, I'll keep talking.
I was going to
Okay.
Bob shuts up. I don't care who else is talking.
well, I'd echo the CIO role, you know, or CTO, and it's not somebody, whether you're a broker, you know, a brokerage firm or team, or, you know, it's not somebody that handles servers or, you know, infrastructure. It's not, that's a completely different role. You know, it's somebody that has that big picture vision, who can interpret the data, who can interpret reports and figure out conversion strategies for all the different, you know, medians of, you know, of leads. But that, you know, that's missing. You know, I see it across even brokerage firms all across the country, in Canada even. You know, that's missing. It's not the server guy. It's not the hardware person.
In answer to your last question about the robots, because I'm not sure if we finished answering that question, what we did say was there's so much information out there that scares people. I don't think robots are less scary than the information. So I do think it's always going to require us, again, to be sitting down with a family at the kitchen table. In answer to this question, I'm going to be a little bit more direct. Not, you know, I can't think as high level as they do. That's why I have my son Bill. All right. But I will tell you that one of the things that we find the most difficult at KCM is you need to hire someone, and it's easy to say a graphic artist. You need someone who specializes in data visualization.
No, that's a good point.
Their data visualization is extremely important, meaning when you get the report from the Joint Center of Housing Studies at Harvard University, that's going to be a 45-page report. You want somebody that knows how to take that 45-page report and get it into 3 meaningful slides that very simply and effectively communicate what that report just said.
And that is hard work.
That's hard work.
All right, Chris is standing over there. He looks so lonely. Nobody's asked a question on that side of the audience, and I know he's itching to hand the microphone to someone because he's been practicing.
I got a hand up front here.
Okay, Kyle Whistle. So being a millennial, I managed to just purchase a car without ever going to a car dealership, which was beautiful, because that is a nightmarish experience. And
Agreed.
I know that the real estate experience is going to, you know, evolve to the point where realtors become less needed, but there's going to be technology that helps make that happen. What technology are you guys excited about and adopting that you think we should implement into our businesses to help appeal to millennials? Because most millennials, we don't want to talk on the phone. That's the last thing that we ever want to do. So how do we help our clients out getting through the real estate process? What technology, what apps?
You know, go ahead. No, please. Okay. I'm a millennial as well. Newsflash, sorry, shocker. And
I gave birth to a millennial. Well, I mean, not me personally.
I was like, wow.
I was going to say, man, I didn't realize.
You know, I'd keep my eye on, you know, the Matterport type experience, you know, as far as millennial interaction. I don't know if that's quite, you know, the solution or the answer, but how that works with, you know, the virtual reality and, you know, is it just a shiny penny? I think it's too early to tell right now. But I think that little sliver of our industry is something to keep an eye on. That'll help with, you know, technology. I don't think technology will ever replace, like we said, with the person-to-person business, but I think that vertical is very interesting, and how that's going to evolve, it's too early to tell, like I said, but you know, I think that's very important. But on the same note, it's kind of scary too, because people can go through and be like, oh, you know, do they have a gun safe? What are their, you know, is that an alarm? You know, do they have like alarms on their windows? You know, people are putting so much out there. So there's pros and cons to both, but I think it'd be important to just keep an eye on that, part.
Yeah, I think, and kind of following that, I had a couple thoughts. The hybrid tools, which are the apps that consumers can use along with their agents, those are the ones that really help grow the consumer experience and help bring your relationship even closer. You know, I see tools like HomeZada, doorsteps, 5 Street. You know, some of these things that are the hybrid collaborative tools that you can use with buyers and sellers to help them navigate through the process of buying or selling, or even home ownership. I mean, I think like HomeZada is one of these home ownership tools that helps nurture their relationship after the close. It's primarily a tool for homeowners, but if it's also a collaboration tool with agents to help them, you know, understand what home ownership actually means. And it's an education tool. It's a way that you're showing your value. The other thing that I think is going to be really big is really having a good, workable understanding of smart home technology. It would not surprise me that within the next 2 to 3 years, this actually becomes like the short sale specialist, you know, type of, you know, thing where you actually become actually a specialist for being a smart home technologist. And that is something that millennials especially, are going to want to have in their homes. They want to know if they're buying a home that has smart home technology. They want to know what they can install. They want to know who's in the area that can install that for them. Homes are becoming smarter, and the millennials are smarter than a lot of the agents that are selling that. So I would become a good smart home technologist, keep up with the trends in terms of things like Nest, other things that are becoming really big components in actually bringing value to homes and home builders.
I'd agree.
Well, you know, Kyle, being a baby boomer and buying a car on eBay, okay, here's what I learned is I didn't want to talk to anybody either. It's no different than the homes buying public. They don't want to talk to you until they're ready to make the decision, especially in the millennial area. If we look at millennials are going to make up, you know, largest contingent, you know, of buyers and sellers, you know, in the next 3 to 5 years, the first thing you got to do is understand what each generation wants and what each generation, how they want to be communicated with. And the simplest way to do it is ask them, because you'll still have some millennials who still want the old-fashioned phone call. So first understand the individual and treat them like an individual by talking to them.
The only thing, I'll say to you is there's a great study that was not done that long ago by Google about exactly what you're asking. And it talks about the car business particularly, and then it gives other businesses where they're saying there's a new stop, where it used to be, you know, the first step was the stimulus to act. So like you might see a car driving down the road, you might see an ad, and you want to get it. The next stop was right into a store, all right, and or you know, one of the car dealership. And then you'd meet a salesman, and he'd talk to you, blah, 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 and then you would get into the car and ride the car. All right, what the ZMOT, Zero Moment of Truth, is the name of the study. What that study shows is that the whole sales process has changed. The first step is still that act, you know, whatever caused you to act. The second step is going right to the internet. Now, the question that I have for you is, do you think that going to the internet to buy your car is the same experience as going to the internet to buy your home? That's what you would have to look at. But if you go to the ZMOT report, Zero Moment of Truth, you will eat that up, because it really breaks down that your appearance on social media, your appearance in any industry, your appearance on the internet is more important than your face-to-face meeting with these people. 70% of the buying decisions right now are being determined before they ever meet you. So like, you know how you have that listing down the block in your farm and some idiot agent got it? And you said, how did they list with that moron? I own this neighborhood. How could they not list with me? Well, check that other person's social media page. Because what they did is they didn't have to win the face-to-face. They beat you before the face-to-face. And that report, ZMOT, again, Kyle, you'll eat that up.
Well, and along those lines too, so Google Think Insights just did another thing, and I've heard it a couple times now, but you know, people pursue big goals in small moments, which is something that Google's come out with. And they're really reinforcing the fact that we are using our mobile so much more than we're using, you know, the bigger things. And so we're making bigger decisions in smaller amounts of time. And so the education process becomes a much smaller window. So, you know, I talked a little bit earlier about, and I think you said this too, it's like slowing down, being really intentional about the information that you're giving and that you're receiving, process it, and make sure that you're putting it out in snackable, approachable, relatable, pieces of information. And I think that that's going to be the new expert. It's the
They
new
call
way of
them micro
communicating.
moments. They call
yeah,
them
they're
exact micro
they're
moments.
absolutely they're micro moments, and being able to articulate different things to consumers in smaller amounts of time is going to be very powerful. Which is why I suggest always use your personal, your personal brand and your persona to help people trust that before they even get to that moment.
And I think one technology, and a few people mentioned it a few sessions ago, but it was live chat. It's been around for a while, and some people see it as kind of intrusive. It's just because their strategy's all wrong. I've noticed, and we did a study with ReadyChat on the efficacy of live chat services in the real estate industry, and it's really interesting how all you have to do is you look at your Google Analytics, you take a look at average time on site, subtract 30 seconds from that, and that's when you ping them. You don't ping them as soon as they get on, just to remind them that they're there. So, that's one strategy, but also, they have an exit strategy. So if you leave the threshold to X out of the window, then you can initiate the live chat. So there's a lot of things within live chat that's really innovating and helping close. I mean, we've seen closed deals, upwards of 7% conversions through live chat, which is huge. And I think that's something to consider, at least keep an eye on, because they are constantly innovating. And actually, Justin Shum, who's the CEO for ReadyChat, he said, we did a webinar, he said that 95% of all of the chat volume, all across all of their clients, was proactively reaching out. So it's not the consumers on there clicking, oh, I want to chat. It's actually being smart about initiating the chat, but 95% of all their chat volume, it's really interesting. So you might be missing opportunities for people that maybe don't want to fill out a contact form. But this is another opportunity, because you have all this lead generation technology and you're spending all this money on marketing, you might as well, have some conversion strategies in place to help.
Cade's been waiting all day to use the word efficacy, by the way. Go ahead.
What does that mean? I was confused with them.
I don't know.
Hi, Susanna Murphy. If education is where it's at on a broker level, what platforms, technology-based or none, do you suggest to use to educate your team? And for all the agents in the room, where are you seeing the trends going for them to educate their clients?
That's an easy one for me.
Why don't you take that one, Steve?
Leslie, why don't you say that one more time?
Cue the music intro.
In case you don't know, and I apologize if we've never gotten to you, but I've spent the last 7 years of my life worrying about education and educating the public, going out in 2007 to companies all across the country. I was actually spending 200 nights a year in a hotel. That's how much I was speaking, trying to help the industry through the short sales and the foreclosures. And what I realized was 4 years before that, we weren't educating the consumer properly. We were just worried about the transaction and closing the deal instead of educating the consumer and letting the consumer and their family close themselves. So I made that kind of my lifelong goal for however long I'm going to be here. And I started something KCM. There's a 14-day free trial. I'm not trying to do an ad here. But I think if you get on there, a lot of the education material that you'll be looking for is there in magazine format, in social media format, in any format you want. My team, my son Bill is here, has done a great job. Another great place for education is where, what's your name? CAD works.
Cade.
Cade works. Real Trends. I want to call him Chad. I don't know what he looks like. A Chad.
You can call me Chad. Oh,
where Cade works. Real Trends is another great resource that has great information available, really sensational information available. So I would look at those two things first.
And I'm sorry, I don't mean where to gather the information from. I mean, what platform will you use to communicate it?
To agents or to consumers or both?
Both. On a broker level.
On a
to your
broker
team,
level,
Right.
how would you initiate the education process and where for each of the constituents she's trying to serve, agents
Right,
and
because we got the
consumer?
data already. We
Okay.
know where to go and get it.
All right, if you got the data, then what you want to do is you want to start getting data on where people are looking. Laura already touched on this. What we're now finding, the most recent stats that came out, that 66% of Americans are looking for their news on Facebook. Okay? Their news. All right, so what you want to do is you want to make sure you have a very strong, as Laura said, a very, very strong social media platform. What has also come out this year, and you're going to see it in your mailboxes this year, there's a rebirth of magazines. People like looking through the physical copies again. So marketers across the country, they're really talking about that in a big way. And again, you'll see that in catalogs you're going to be getting in over the next couple of months. I would want it in a magazine format, high gloss, 20-page magazine. This is why you should buy a house. 20-page high gloss magazine. This is why you should sell your house. You have to update that at least every 90 days. All right. So I would have that. I would have a very strong social media platform. And then what I would try to do, and I think that the webinars might be the time to do that now, but at least in open classroom settings within your offices, you could go ahead and bring in consumers that are confused about the equity in their home. Well, like, what do we say today? Almost 45% of Americans think they need an 800 FICO score to buy a house. Well, what about, like, this is what you really need to do a mortgage, and doing, whether you're doing seminars in your office with some mortgage professionals, or whether you're doing webinars from your office. What the whole trick is, whichever way you think is the best way to educate is the way you do that. What we try to do is do a cross-brand. If it's social media, we want to make sure we have that covered. If it's doing webinars, you need PowerPoints, we make sure you have that covered. If it's magazines, we make sure you have that covered. Because I think that each one of those things will do different. And I will tell you, and I don't mean to belabor this point, but ladies and gentlemen, if you have your materials and they're not in Spanish, you're making a big mistake moving forward. All right? You're making a big mistake moving forward.
Donald Trump would agree with that.
Me and Donald disagree on a couple of things.
I think having a good mix, like he just mentioned, but also video. I know. Yeah, I know you didn't touch on video, but video is hugely important. I mean, you can ask probably Bob right here in the front if video is really good, but I think that's pretty important as well.
I'm going to make a suggestion too, and Laura brought this to us from Inman. We had heard about Slack, and we had heard about how it could be utilized, and from inside of technology companies, because it's a really open platform. It's a fabulous way to create communication between team members in an environment that breaks away from the traditional email models, these siloed pieces of information that allows you to bring data into this single platform so that everybody's seeing and listening to conversations at the same time, but without the craziness of managing email. And so we need to sometimes look outside of the real estate industry to the tools that other industries are using to improve those kinds of communication opportunities. So when you're specifically talking, and I don't know whether you've looked at it or not, but when you're specifically talking about improving how you're educating your team, having better team communication tools will make that education easier because it encourages the kind of conversation that education should have around it, if that makes sense.
And there's a company called Yapmo, which is in our industry, and they do a great job at that. Ultimately it's a company intranet and communication platform, but it also and I know they have an integration with Boomtown as well. But you can have that, and there's tiered permissioning so that people can see different tools, but you can have almost like a bookmark site of all your different platforms on there, whether, I don't know what firm you're with, but if you have like a relocation, department and you use eRelo, or I don't know, but you can have Boomtown, you can have all these different systems all on the same communication platform, and videos included, and you can bring content in, great content through there and display it. So.
Okay,
Also deliver it consistently. And that's where I think where a lot of people fail is you'll deliver something and you don't get results and you stop. We have to do things repeatedly to find out what is your consumer asking for. And ask your consumer what format you would like it. Don't be afraid to ask them what format you want it. You want it in video? Do you want it in paper? Do you want it in the mail? Do you want it in email? How do you want it? Ask them.
Cade, by the way, Boomtown does not integrate with Yapmo, just so you know.
Well, and I know that the passwords can be shared
coming
back
up,
and forth.
maybe?
SSO. No, I know that they have something with Boomtown.
I'll wait for the next text from the Boomtown team.
To be
Sorry,
announced.
Boomtown.
Gee, it just blew it, Cade.
Not integration. They're friends.
Okay, Susanna,
They're friends. I like that. They're
you and I will
friends.
have our conversation. So what I would do is a little bit of mix of old-fashioned and a little bit of new stuff. I think you need to build education and content into your culture, into your brokerage, which means that To me, I would make sure that every agent in your office knows that educating the consumer is going to be one of their #1 jobs when they're not actually in the middle of a transaction. Another thing I would consider doing is owning whatever content you are using to get that message out there and brand it in your own customizable way. I love that there's a lot of curating of content that we can do, but without your expertise attached to that, consumers know the difference between content curators and content creators. So we want you to be the creator, and I talked with Elza earlier today, and I'm sure you know this, that when you see other agents, you know who's just rehashing somebody else's awesome stuff. You also know who's creating it. So build it into your actual every single day, real life conversations. And if you have someone that you can hire, even if it's a virtual assistant that can help you come up with a content strategy that you can either bring into your meetings within your office and then decide how you're going to distribute and publish in all of the different mediums. It could be a variety of things. It could be the videos, it could be ads, it could be LinkedIn publishing. You may find more leads just doing LinkedIn publishing, but what I would encourage you is that you own the content. So if it's on a blog, if it's on your website, anything that you put out should have the objective to go back to you. Drive it back to you. Have your agents amplify it for you and their brand. And I just think that's a really good place to start. Then see what works and then build on that.
Who wants to be our last question? Final question. Ready? Make it a good one. No pressure.
Okay. One of the things I just want you guys to comment on that I went to a seminar last year they talked about is that the real estate agents really have to know their market. What I mean by that is everything that we're talking about the millennials is really more for the buy side. But if you market to the millennials on the buy side and you're really attempting to get a lot of listings, especially in neighborhoods that are really established with houses that were built in the 50s and 60s and so on and so forth, you're going to miss a lot of those sellers. And what they were really talking about last year is that you really have to define your marketing almost into two separate marketing packages that will obviously overlap in some respects. But if you're going after millennials, you're mostly going after the buyers, at least, let's say in my market in New York. And if you really want to go after the sellers, some of it's social with Facebook and stuff, but it's not all the tweeting and all that other stuff. They like postcards and calling and door knocking. You really have to define who you're going after and go after those people with the right
You have to know your buyer
market.
personas. You have to put them in buyer personas so that you know who you're targeting, and that content will be created based on those people. So if millennials is someone that you're targeting and it's a millennial buyer, then the content that you create needs to be specific to that. And yes, like you said, the flip side needs to be very intentional. If it's towards a seller that has more traditional, then you know that the content you create needs to be for that person. Mapping those journeys of those buyer personas and seller personas and whoever else you have, empty nesters, whatever, is going to help you create a strategy that you can build on. You have to know what works. If you don't know, you can't build on it. You can't improve.
Well, it's also, go ahead. Well, it is knowing your client. Is I think all of us, agree. You got to know your client. Go back to Kyle's question about, buying a car. All right, and Mark, we actually have millennials that are also they're selling their first homes that they bought. So really, if we look at the majority of the homes that are being sold, they're probably going to be by baby boomers. Okay, however, the millennials are now coming into the selling process. So for years, all real estate agents had to do was focus, please, he who owns the listings owns the market. So know the demographics of what's the age of the sellers. The thing is, for years, we've only had to focus on the baby boomer seller. Now coming in are the millennial sellers who have grossly different wants and needs than what you're used to ever in your real estate careers. Know your demographics.
Yeah, on the millennials, just understand that 24% of all homeowners are millennials. Let's not forget the home buyer credit back in 2010 that caused a whole bunch of millennials, first-time home buyers, to get into the market. So let's not forget about them. They're not, when I talk about millennials, I don't just talk about buyers. Many of them are sellers. But now, on the answer to your question, that's where that education came in that we talked about this morning. If the people back in New York, like me, that own a 4-bedroom colonial, my kids are finally out, if I don't understand the equity of my house, I don't know that I can sell my house, get a nice little condo around the corner, and also now purchase my retirement home with the excess equity, retirement home that I could use as a vacation home and rent out if I can't afford it year-round, rent it out some of the better seasons until I do retire. That's all education. The one thing that I might disagree with you on in that is my wife's mother's mother is on Facebook. So I don't know that social media doesn't mean that the older people are not there. You know, I agree with it. You know, they might be moving, you know, the millennials might be moving to the more current thing, but if you look whatever that thing is, Instagram or whatever it is, all right, but I think that there's a whole bunch of people looking for information, my age, looking for information, and if they come across that information on any social media, they're going to use it. People, they get into a hypersensitive state of awareness once they decide to buy a house. They look for it everywhere they possibly can. So you want to make sure that you have that. And I just want to make a point. What Laura was saying, I agree 100% with what she said, and there might be some people in this room that think I disagree with that. The perfect situation is you have information from the national level or regional level, but that you bring it down and use some of those examples to really create, you know, you say you already have the data, right? Take that data and create great stories that are really, you know, the stories that you created that they know are coming from you. I don't disagree with that at all. I very much agree with it. Just realize that every one of your sellers, when they're thinking about selling, where did they listen for information? They went to CNBC News and watched the news, the housing report. They opened up the Wall Street Journal and read the Wall Street Journal, and they watched Bloomberg News, or listened to Bloomberg News on the radio. All three of them are reporting on what? The national market. That's the information your consumer has before you sit at the kitchen table with them. If you come in with local information that's much different without explaining the national market, guess what? You're putting them in a very bad position. Do they believe Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, and CNBC, who are all saying the same thing, or do they believe you that's saying something different? Don't put them in that position. Go in knowing what the national market is and work your way down, and then curate your own information, even when you're sending stuff out there about, I love when KCM members say, you know, 4 reasons to buy in Sacramento. Because they take what we've given them and really personalize it to their marketplace. That makes all the sense in the world. But there's a whole bunch of people. I hire 12 people for the information I put out. I don't know how many people in here can hire 12 people to get the information out. That's all I'm saying.
Give it up for our panel of experts, please. Gang, thank you so much.